Hello guys, my name is Dawid Jachowicz. I'm from Wrocław. I work in Unique, which is a Swiss company. We do projects for external customers. We use CMSs like, of course, Sitecore and also hybrids, Drupal or PHP. And today I will present you a NitroNet Sitecore, which we use in our recent projects in Sitecore CMS. But maybe before I tell you what NitroNet is, I should give you some background. So, what was the problem and why we even use this NitroNet? So, in Unique, we have two teams. One is separate team for frontend, and the second one is for backend. And usually, workflow will look like this: that frontend had to prepare the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc., and push it to their repository and their preview server. And then when it was prepared, backend could start creating the logic, the data template, data models, and of course implement their HTML into the CS HTMLs using Razor. And the problem was that we had like two places to maintain HTML, of course, their and backend repositories. Second problem was that very often CS HTML looked a little bit different because it has to be dynamic for content editors. They have to, have this ability to modify fields, place components into placeholders, and very often we had problems with support for experience editor mode and the normal mode. So quite often a backend developer had to create like a dummy HTML which was only rendered on experience mode. And we needed to find a solution because it was really slowing us down. And when the change request came from the client, we had to change inside two places, right? The whole front end. And we decided to use NitroNet for this. But maybe before I tell you what it is, I will briefly present you the handlebars, because NitroNet allows us to use this thingy. So this is quite simple. It's very similar to Razor. It allows us to use some if statements, and so it allows us to do the HTML more dynamic. And the idea of handlebars is basically that the view, the HTML, is very simple and logicless. So the only thing it accepts is the data model, and then basically it do the whole rendering. And yeah, so we decided to use this NitroNet for Sitecore. The NitroNet for Sitecore is a plugin for Sitecore, which uses the NitroNet for MVC, because the NitroNet isn't like stricter for Sitecore. This was long before, and firstly it was developed for MVC, and this is basically a new view engine for MVC. This overrides the MVC default view engine, and it allows us to use the handlebars instead of Razor. It's a hybrid, so we can also use these CS HTMLs with Razor along with handlebars, and very often, sometimes it's very helpful because you remember this function which is called visitor identification. You have to put it inside the layout to identify the contacts, as far as I remember. And in using handlebars, we couldn't really do it, so we had to implement this component using CS HTMLs. But that was one of the very few examples. And NitroNet really supports most of the main features that are important for us. It has full support for experience editor. It also supports personalization, because it's just a different view engine which properly renders HTML when the sitecores run. So there's really nothing much inside it, but we had a few issues because NitroNet on default is supported by Sitecore 8, and we are using in many projects more and more we're going to use Sitecore 9, and we are using it in 3 projects now. And we had to make some modification to make it support for Sitecore 9, so we have our own fork on GitHub with this NitroNet thingy. We also noticed very common pattern. So we basically when we were when we are doing this very annoying work creating new components, which is basically very boring and manual. So repository, service, model builder or mapper, how we call it, and controllers. So we decided to make an abstraction, which is called the model builders, and the second bullet point, controllers. This is basically caused by the fact we introduced these model builders. So maybe our benefits. So what it really gives us is the fact that frontend can develop how they want. They can use React wherever, but the only requirement is for them is to use this handlebar markup to create this dynamic frontend. And backend has peace of mind, less stress and worries. So we don't even have view in .NET solution. It's basically in frontend folder, and the only thing we care is where the module is. So we only have to give controller a path to the module, to HBS, the handlebar file. And it's very efficient. We don't have many problems that we usually had with standard Razor syntax. So I will give you a very short presentation of how we are using it. So maybe I will show you a Sitecore. So this is a component which is dynamic. We can edit all the things here. It works, thank God. And this is basically the HBS file, which represents this component. We have the even. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, looks better. So it even supports the edit frames, and we use it to wrap up the images, so we can dynamically give a content editor a possibility to change the image in content editor. You saw probably these if statements, so we have some very simple view logic, presentation logic inside the HTML markup. And so if I remove this field, if I save it, as you can see, it's still visible, but because this is an edit mode, but if I go to normal, it disappears, so it looks like it's working. So maybe I will show you I will start with the controller, because this is very often how the controller looks like. There's really not much inside. The only thing that is interesting for us is this path to the HBS file, and that's basically it. We gives the ability to override the in action, which is the index action, but I used this like a couple of times where I had to do, so for example, I had to disallow breadcrumb rendering if the page is on 3rd level. That was one of the requirements. But And really the magic happens inside the so-called model builders. This was introduced by Unique, and there is no implicit reference to the model builder, because there is a service which which runs during the initialization, and this uses reflections to localize all the model builders, and then they are registered to IOC container. So we don't have direct implicit references to it, and basically that's it. As you can see here, this is the markup. We use GlassMapper because we have a direct reference to GlassMapper behind it. But that wasn't really a problem for us because we use it in every project. It's really, I can't imagine a project in Unity that doesn't use it. The only annoying thing is this edit frame. So we had to add another view, another model which represents these frames that wraps our more complex objects. So this is the only annoying thing. But overall, from my experience, since I'm using it, I can't really find any issues. Of course, we have all these extensions, the assembly builders, etc., in our code base. So I had a case where I had to modify it, and because we are lacking some features, etc. But yeah, overall, it's much more efficient. I don't care about the view because if view is there's some bug in view, I don't have to modify in CS HTML. The only person that is responsible for view is front-end developer. And yeah, that's it, I guess. It was short, but I hope I gave you the idea, and maybe it will open some new possibilities for you.
Okay, I've got a question from the crowd. Let's say, how is the Glass HTML object being initialized here?
As far as I remember, in one of the abstractions here, we are initializing in one of the pipelines, as far as I remember, but I can't really directly answer this question, so apologies.
Okay. Any questions?
So, I have a question. As far as I understand, this tool for front-end developers, right? Yeah. And does it mean that front-end developers have to work in the Sitecore solution, so in our Visual Studio?
We do have front-end and back-end folders inside one repository. They don't have to use backend SLN, the solution, C# solution, but the only connection is that we have these two separate folders inside the front-end folder and the backend folder. So they don't have to use solutions like C# solution, but the front-end is.
And then backend developers should know the component name, so
yeah, they should know the component.
For mapping controller to the view.
Yeah, front-end have to provide us data model in some kind of documentation page.
Okay, thank you.
So what are the front-end frameworks behind
inside this project, for example, they use React and React DOM with Redux.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then thank you, David.
Thank you.
So 5-minute break and then next presentation.
Who will do next?